if you had kids, would you raise them vegan? And then this concept of rebellion, I don't like that word, but this idea of like when they grow up and they eat meat, how would you feel about it if you did?
I know. I saw that question. I was like, oh man, that's like a really good one.
Also, I hate introductions. I don't know if you hate that with your podcast.
Yeah, it's a little hard. It's are we starting right now?
We are starting.
Oh, okay, we're in it.
We are going.
Yeah, we never know. It's nice because we have like a segment, so we can right away be like, all right, let's just get to the segment.
Okay.
But it's always like a very awkward, like 30 seconds of like, what do we say?
Yeah, for sure.
So especially yours, because you deal with like a lot of like a huge range of topics and like really deep topics. So it's like I don't even know how you start yours.
It was horrible for a while. I always start it now with like, I'll just do it. Okay, well, welcome back everybody to another episode of Little Miss. I'm here with my friend Austin. He has his own podcast, and today's topic, we actually went through like a few that we were trying to decide on, and then I asked him to do more of like a Q&A, like, because we don't get a lot of men on the podcast.
Right.
So I was like, I think it'd be good to get your perspective on some of the questions that we asked.
So I'm representing all men right now.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I'm like, perfect. I
I
hope
love
you're up
that.
to the challenge.
I can do it.
Yeah.
I can do it.
But as I was writing these questions, I realized I actually got into a lot of like the topics that you had sent for
Okay.
like possibilities.
Perfect.
Cool.
First of all, I just want to say also thank you for having me on. I think when we were first thinking of the idea, me and Quentin, who's my co-host, our podcast is called Would You Kindly? We talk about video games.
Plug it.
Yeah, not cool, like not important. It is, we literally are just talking about video games. But you were just somebody that we knew who had a podcast. And I think anybody that I know who does anything creatively, I think is like so cool because you just don't have a lot of people that start like DIY grassroots projects.
Yeah.
And it's like inspiring to see that. So even if it's like, it sucks like our stuff, it's just like throw it out and maybe it inspires somebody to do something cooler,
Yeah.
So thank you for having me on. And I will do my best to represent all men.
I'm excited you're here.
Cool.
I'm also excited you started your podcast because sometimes podcasting is like, there's like, because it's such like a public hobby instead of like a private one, it is like kind of embarrassing sometimes. And I'm like, no, like I'm grateful someone else does it because it is fun and I enjoy it and I like editing it. And
that I don't know why that's never bothered me. And I definitely like care about people's opinions, even though they're really for the birds. But like, I don't know. It's just I've always been like, I guess with ours because it's just video games, like we can make it'd be like, hey, this is for fun, like who cares, so it's not like at the end of the day people cannot take us seriously. But today it's like, with deeper topics it is like, no, I gotta really know my stuff kind of thing.
Yeah, perfect. Also, Austin's wife is here. She's not on camera, but so if you see us like looking off into the left, right for Austin, that's who we're talking to.
She's staring daggers at me at everything I say. Every lie I spew.
I'm excited because there were questions that I was like, oh, I hope Austin like asks Lacey because like I do want to know if you think the same thing. Okay, so some of these I pulled from like previous episodes, some of these I pulled from Reddit, and some of these I did pick because I know you well enough to know you'd have like thoughts on the topic.
Sure.
Something I think that is like the most interesting thing that we have in common is I don't know if you are now, but I know for like a period of time we were both vegan.
I am vegan currently.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
Have you gone through like ups and downs with that, or like have you always been vegan?
Yeah, I mean, so when I was 16, well, actually, I'll back up a little forward. When I was 18, I actually went vegan, but like high school years, I was very involved in like the punk hardcore scene and went to Warped Tour and was given like PETA flyers. And we grew up, our dad was a farmer, so we had like chickens, dogs, we had a turtle, cats, fish, like we just had everything. So I was just given this flyer and just seeing this like bloodied chick, and I'm like, oh, a chicken nugget is a chicken. Like that's kind of weird. But my sister then went vegetarian, and she was kind of like, oh, and she would always like say growing up that she loved her hot dogs, like she's never going to change for that, but she did. So that was kind of like a little bit of a spark. But especially when I was 18, there's this band called Earth Crisis, which is like a vegan band in the late 90s, and their lyrics are filled with like very heavy topics, just talking about the destruction to the environment and the morals of the situation. Yeah, the health risk. It's like very behind like this very heavy, screaming and like, super chuggy guitar. So seeing that for me with like my dumb boy brain, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like breakdown, and they're talking about veganism. So it's always been kind of in the background. Ever since then, I've known it's right. Like I've always known it's the moral thing to do, and it's to me, it's probably the most important thing I do every day is to, in every way I can, just show no harm, specifically to, you know, and this is something that in our day and age, it's so convenient to do that where we don't need to eat meat. But I've definitely, you know, I'm not the best vegan in the world. I think this weekend I had like one chocolate chip cookie at like a graduation party. So I definitely try my like absolute best in every situation. If we're on vacation, will I have like a bite of a cheesecake? I might do that.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of feel crappy. So that's kind of where I'm at now, but I'm pretty like strong on it right now.
That's cool. That's cool. Because I know when we met, you and your wife were both vegan. And I was also vegan at the time, and I'm not anymore. So I was wondering where you guys fell on that. Because even though I do believe in a lot of it, and I felt better doing like being vegan, it just was not sustainable for me to do it forever.
So what specifically was not sustainable? And totally understand because a lot of people feel that way. And specifically, I think people with any type of like dietary restriction, when eating just in general is easy for, or is hard for them. And for me, it's never been that way. So it's like a good thing. But I do know people are like that for sure.
I think it was like I started working at the restaurant I work at now in Arizona, and they started making like really good food that I felt was like fairly healthy. And unfortunately, I got into veganism for like aesthetic reasons and health reasons, where I was like, oh, if I just like cut out all of these factors, then I'll look my best.
Right.
And then when I started at the Scott, I was like, oh, well, they make me salmon and vegetables every night. So like, why wouldn't I eat that? But I do have like a huge, I do have a big moral thing with it that I do struggle with a lot, even now, where it's like, I don't know, like they're going to throw all this meat out at my job. Like, should I eat it or should I not? And I go through that like all the time.
And that's definitely like a fair moral question. I think I've just gotten to the point where just the idea of flesh, like eating flesh, is just kind of weird to me.
Yeah.
But there are like the Used. They call themselves trash can vegans. So they eat everything on tour. They eat only things out of trash cans. So
that's
I know.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
Which is weird because like they definitely are like rich, but you know, they're also the first. Yeah, they also are the first communist rock band ever. Technically, is the Used.
Okay.
But so morally, I mean, at that point, it is being thrown away, you know. And so, like, I used to be out of high school. I was super strict. If I got a Taco Bell bean burrito and they added cheese, I'd be like, I can't eat this.
Same,
Now I'm good to the point where it's like, okay, this is actually wasteful, you know. Right. If they'll make me another one, I'll give it to my friend. That's fine. But at that point, it's just like actually like wasteful in terms of resources.
True.
So, but yeah, I mean, it is important to me. And Lacey, my wife, is, you know, I would say mostly she's still every once in a while like out to eat. She might get some salmon or something. But I think like, especially, I don't know if you feel this way, but like 5 years ago, maybe like 5, 6, 7, it was like really like a huge fad. And I think it was, and I definitely adopted this like very extreme, which is like you can never like cheat, you have to be fully vegan. I think now I think it's kind of going in the opposite way. We've got like the carnivore diet and things like that, but I'm hoping that people just get more conscious about their choices. I mean, even if it's just 3 times a day not having meat, I mean, there's statistics online that actually has a huge impact just on the environment. So we just got to get away from like extreme thinking and just find ways that everybody can be able to contribute.
I do like that you said that, because one of the things that when I was very strict vegan, like sometimes I didn't even want to call myself vegan because I'd be like, well, I get ranch with my fries.
Oh,
and
that's
it's
a
like,
great one.
That is so, for like a true vegan. I remember meeting you guys because Maddie told me you guys were vegan. And I remember like going to that first party and being like, I hope they know I eat ranch.
Right.
Because veganism is such a weird thing, because like not only is it a food aspect, there is like, I don't want to say religious, but there is like, it's a label, and you do have to like follow that technical.
It can become a religion in some ways.
It can, yeah,
definitely. And you know, I do have a soft spot for I know people that are like considered like vegan terrorists, like they're like wanted for breaking into ASU and releasing rabbits. things like that. So I do have a
Which
soft.
I would do that.
I know. I mean,
Yeah.
for testing, like testing bunnies, and so I do have a soft spot for those people, and I have friends that are very, very strong vegans, and I would say I lean more towards that, but I am also like, at the end of the day, like we were just in Kentucky, and it was almost impossible for me to be vegan. I mean,
Yeah,
actually, like I
yeah.
was eating. There's one lunch where I literally had like a half a loaf of bread for lunch.
Ugh, I remember those days. Yeah.
That's the point where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, is this the time where like I'm gonna get fries with some ranch, But my hope, because again, vegans have done a really bad job at making this religion, and I really hope that people can just see like, no, this is just a moral question. Like, do you want to contribute? Let's try to contribute as little as possible to factory farming.
Yeah. Period. And I do really like that.
Yeah.
One of the questions I put on my list was, I saw this a few times on Reddit and then I kind of just paraphrased it. There's such a connection between like veganism and masculinity, which is stupid, but
Right.
yeah. What would you say to someone like a man who was like, oh, I'm in my 20s and like I would like to go vegan for X, Y, and Z, but I feel like I'll be seen as less of a man. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's like so many thoughts. Like, first, I'm definitely not the like. I don't think about like, oh, how do I be like a masculine person? That's just like not a thought that I have. So it's never really concerned me. I got a lot of other concerns, but that's just not one. I would say that just, it's so, if we're talking, okay, like what are the aspects of masculinity? Okay, let's talk about like discipline. And what is more disciplined? Is driving through McDonald's and getting a Big Whack more disciplined, or is, making a vegetable salad that has no sign of cruelty whatsoever? Is that more of a sacrifice? I would say that's more of a sacrifice. So honestly, though, it's just like, I know this sounds like grim, but like, if you are somebody who is concerned with animal well-being, you're interested in veganism, but you're concerned with like your family or friends think, like, everybody you are ever going to know is going to die, and their opinions are not going to matter. And what's not going to die are principles. And we're living in a time where, I do believe that, if our world continues in 100, 200 years, we will look back on factory farming just as harshly as we do now with slavery. Or women's lack of rights, things that like as society has progressed, and as we've evolved, that we get rid of these things that are pests in our society. So, I just think like people, if you are a man and you're struggling with that, I mean, there's a lot of, I would say also do your research, just see the cruelty with your own eyes. I mean, there's a great documentary called Dominion. It's free on YouTube. I just finished a book called Eating Animals. That's an awesome book. There's another great book, and you can edit this out if you want. But the book, I mean, really, the book that is the best for a man to read is Meat is for Pussys. So that's the book. It's written by John Joseph, who is a longtime vegan. I mean, this guy, if you're talking about in terms of masculinity, this is like the most masculine guy. Like in a hardcore band full of tattoos, he does triathlons, and like he used to sell angel dust like in the 80s, and like he is just like hard, and he's a full vegan. So he wrote this great book, and that's another source I would look to. But at the end of the day, like, don't worry about what people think. Let your principles guide you.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That's fair. Okay, let's talk about straight edge. That's like the term, right?
That is the term.
Okay.
Yeah.
I put this on the list because when I first met Lacey and I was asking how you guys met, she'd mentioned that you were straight edge. Yes. Okay. So it's literally as much research I've done. That's all I know. So talk about that. What is that?
Yeah. So straight edge is, I mean, I could really nerd out here about punk and hardcore, but essentially a hardcore is a branch of punk music, which, punk was kind of complaining about all the problems in the world, and hardcore was more of a branch that was the solution. And through hardcore, through punk, obviously you have a lot of fans that are destructive lifestyles, Ramones, where it's like, doing drugs and just like smashing bottles on their heads and committing crimes. And hardcore was not so much that. There was more of a youth crew movement, really led by bands like Youth of Today, which were more positive thinking. And out of that came from this band called Minority Unit, or Minority Threat, I should say, from Washington, D.C. They coined the term straight edge. And straight edge is essentially a life pact. You're basically saying like I'm never going to do drugs, I'm never going to drink, and it's different between than being sober, because sober is like, oh, I just don't do that.
Right.
Straight edge is more, I'm against that. I'm against those things. It's different for everybody. It was never so much that me. I'm more trying to represent the actual definition. And so, yeah, from 16 to like 26, I was straight edge.
Okay.
So for like 10 years.
Not only were you sober, you were like, everyone should be sober a little bit.
You know, that was never my perspective. I never really cared if other people did it. I think that for me at the time, I was really I think especially at that time, I would have been very susceptible to like a destructive lifestyle, party kind of lifestyle. And I think it was something that I just latched onto. I was reading lyrics and I was like, oh yeah, I believe this. Like, you know, I've seen, you know, my aunt struggle with like crack addiction, or different family members, like alcoholics. And, you know, I was like, oh, I appreciate this. So I kind of latched onto that, and it was sort of a way for me to create an identity outside of like hardcore or my parents or friends, and it gave me a sense of community in that way. And so I'm very like thankful that I was, and I love the music. I love straight edge bands. I still have like many straight edge friends today, but I am no longer straight edge.
Fair enough.
That more has to go with just kind of my new belief, just in like not being super rigid with, you know, not being so rigid with ideas, or even like as a person, just being like, oh, I'm a straight edge person. It's like, no, I'm just a human being, you know? So it just got to the point, it's like we would go to Spain, and like I couldn't have a glass of wine with my wife, you know, as we're, having a meal. So it's just got to the point where it's like, okay, I'm not loving it. It's just got to the point where it's like, I don't really need this in my life right now. But
like, is this a net positive or net negative?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, you know, I think there's periods where I will be sober. I think sobriety's an amazing thing, and I still hold on to the values in terms of like, we do live in a society that revolves around poisoning ourselves to be able to, you know, have conversations and have a good time, and, you know, be able to
me when I have to drink for this podcast.
I mean,
actually,
me too. You know, it still can be a tool for sure, but there are like actual companies profiting on alcoholics and like destructive behavior. So that's where I still hold the morals, and I think it's important that it's out there, but it just got to the point where it's just not needed for my lifestyle anymore.
I think you're so interesting, you and Lacey, because you're probably the only couple I know where you were vegan and then you met your wife, and then she like kind of saw things from your perspective a little bit more. How did it go when you met Lacey? And again, this is not on the questions, so if you don't want to answer.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Okay, cool. How did it go when you met Lacey and you were like, oh, I have like, in a lot of ways, more like empathetic ideals than most men? And like, how did she take to them? I think I've heard this from your perspective, but I'd like to hear it from yours. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember that the first, and what's funny is like when I go to a restaurant, like I'm embarrassed to like order the veggie burger, no cheese. Like that's like embarrassing for me, because it's just like gonna spawn questions, and not like I'm like, of course I think it's important to talk about, but I'm also like, this is just like not it's like I gotta answer the same questions every time. So like I was kind of embarrassed. The first time we met, we went and we saw the last Hunger Games movie.
Slay, we love Hunger Games.
What was it? Breaking Dawn Part 2? I don't even know.
Mockingjay.
What? Mockingjay Part 2. Okay, and then we went out after, and I think I ordered a veggie burger, and you were asking me about it, and I was like, oh yeah, like you know, yeah. She thought I was joking, which I probably was, but I think we just kind of quickly you were kind of immediately interested in it, and I think you right away were like, you know what, I'm going to try to go vegan Monday through Friday, and her sister was really strict vegan or vegetarian. So okay, so she was at times vegetarian, and so I mean these things were kind of, you know, in the head, yeah. And then I
Okay,
think
it wasn't completely foreign.
right, exactly. And so then it kind of just we started to kind of create this new friend group with several of her friends. We just kind of talk about it, and yeah. I mean, I don't think we've never like disagreed. She's never been like, oh no, like factory farming's like a good thing. We've always been on the same page right away. So that was like super refreshing.
Wait, actually, yeah, here, hold the mic. She's not on camera, but yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of always said, like, if I'm going to go to Paris, like, I'm going to have, like, steak frite or something. I mean, now I wouldn't even maybe do that, but I didn't want it to hold me back from, like, some really important human experiences.
Right.
Or, like, if I'm going to go to a wedding, I'm going to have a piece of cake, obviously, So I think I was already, like, not as strict as you, and I never became as strict as you. I still adopted
I love
it
that,
to the
though.
extent that I could and felt was right.
I love the concept of meeting someone who has like maybe slightly different ideals than you, and you find a way to like fit that in your life without completely getting rid of your boundaries. Yeah. Because like what you described is my ideal view of like animal products, where it's like I don't necessarily want to eat those every day. I am gonna have cake at a wedding,
Right.
and I do really love that. Yeah.
Yeah, because some things just can't be like replicated, I guess.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned with like the Kentucky trip, like human experience, like sharing a meal with some people, trying something, and I'm also way more of a foodie than Austin is.
Definitely.
That means it's like a high on my values list. So it is hard to resist certain things just for the sake of morals, but I also know that it is very important too. So it's hard balance.
I felt similarly when you said like, oh, when I go to Spain, I want to have like a glass of wine with my wife. When I first went to Italy, I was 16 and I never had an animal product.
Oh wow, yeah.
Or wait. Maybe I did in Italy, but there was some foreign trip where I do distinctly remember being like, well, I can't have that.
Was that hard in Italy specifically? I mean, that's got to be.
Actually, maybe in Italy I wasn't. But there was some trip where I do remember the distinct feeling. And yeah, it is hard. I remember I took a road trip. This isn't international, but I was very vegan at the time. And I took this road trip with my friends like across the states. And like they'd stop for fast food and I would open up a can of corn in the back and eat it.
Wow.
And
yeah.
I was already tiny and I lost like 7 pounds on that trip because I was like, I just can't have that. And I kind of do regret. I'm like, I wish I'd had like the food in Nashville when we went. I wish I'd had this and that, and just never did.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I mean, I would say like I am pretty extreme, and like I said, I try my best, of course.
Yeah.
But there's like Earth Crisis again is one of my favorite bands. In the '90s, they were touring Japan, and they were literally like eating like Chex Mix and putting soy milk in like their mouth, like, and that was like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it's like, that, I mean, just have like a quesadilla or something. I don't know. But, I do think it's important. I want to like, it is very important to me, and I want to advocate for it because I think especially now I've seen the change in the last like 5 to 6 years. And I think especially 5 to 6 years ago, it was just such a big topic with so many people.
Yeah.
And I thought as like the internet kind of gets bigger and bigger, people would just be more aware of the cruelty that's dealt to animals, and I just think it's still hidden and still and that by design, because these animal corporations are so big and so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that when you go to McDonald's and you buy a $1 burger, that burger does not cost $1. A piece of cow cannot cost $1. It's not possible.
Right.
So what they have is government subsidies. The government is actually funding, they're giving money to these places in the name of agriculture to be able to have people afford it at a lower cost. Problem is we're still paying for that through our taxes and through the environment. A burger should really cost like $50 genuinely. So it's just such a broken system, and I do hope we kind of get back to people talking about it. And I try to do my best every single day, but also don't kill yourself if you're at a wedding.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. By the way, I don't think either of you are extreme when you said that. You're like, I try not to be.
Yeah.
I literally don't think that. What do you think about like in other like European states? Because we were just in Europe last year, and my sister also runs vegetarian, but not completely strict. And she was like, well, when I'm in Europe, I think I am going to eat meat because the like conditions are way different.
I would say watch Dominion, which is probably like the most violent thing you could ever see. And it takes place in Australia.
Oh, okay.
Which, and if you look at the laws of Australia compared to the United States in terms of what corporations are allowed to do, like, for example, I mean, if you go on Tyson Chicken and you try to film something, I mean, you could literally be shot. You can't do that in Australia. So there's much more access, and still, I mean, it is some of the most like graphic, horrifying things you'll ever see. So, it is better, of course, you know, but I just think it's so also important to, like, quote unquote, you know, like, fund the cause. You go to the mom and pop vegan place that's been there forever, that is going to have great, you know, healthy food, that's cruelty free. So it's still, I mean, even in places like Europe, I mean, these are really, I mean, factory farming is such a blue collar job, and the conditions and what happens to them, it's unfortunately everywhere, just because you have to produce so much product. They're going to be treated terribly.
Yeah. Fair enough. And I agree. I'm going to ask you the last question about veganism, and then we'll pivot. But would you raise if you had kids, would you raise them vegan? And then this concept of rebellion, I don't like that word, but this idea of like when they grow up and they eat meat, how would you feel about it if you did?
I know. I saw that question. I was like, oh man, that's like a really good one. You know, yeah, it's a really tough one because it is so close to my heart. And, you know, of course, I would respect their own choice in the matter and talk with them about it and see why they decide that. But at the end of the day, I mean, you know, they have to live by their own morals and principles. So I would totally respect that. At the same time, you know, if you come over for dinner, like, you know, we're not having meat. So that's just how it is.
Because you'd expect them to respect yours as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of like, hey, if you're in our house, you know, we're not going to, you know, we're not making meat, you know, and if I go over to your house, you know, I'm bringing my own thing, or just put the meat on the side kind of thing.
Fair enough. Do you feel like there's an age of your kid where you would really lock in on that, of like, this is your choice versus mine?
I mean, yeah, it's a great question. And the other thing is, like, I don't know if me and Lacey will even have kids. So, but it's a great question. I mean, we have a niece who I care deeply about. And I guess my thought would just be that, like, it would be something we would talk about, you know, in the same way that I would talk about, like, hey, racism is wrong. You know, I would talk about it like, hey, this is why this is wrong. And, you know, this is why me and your mother do it. And, you know, it's... hopefully you can understand that. But again, like, you know, they're their own person. So, I mean, I have definitely made a lot of choices that my parents have not been okay with. So I am the last person who would be like, you know, you can't do that thing.
Same. Yeah. My mom was vegetarian for like 10 years when I was growing up.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
so
really
it was not a
cool.
foreign concept to me either, but my dad was a huge hunter. So he would go like elk hunting every year. So we always had meat. It was kind of like a weird 50-50 where like my mom would never eat meat. She might occasionally if my dad made elk, but like I don't remember my mom eating meat. But my dad was very much like we have meat and we have protein at every meal, and I mean, like, to be fair, he hunted himself, but
well, and here's the thing. I think a lot of people have a misconception of hunters because they think that hunters really are more vegan than they are just like a going through McDonald's meat eater.
Yes.
These are people that fund like conservationist organizations and have national parks be able to live, and they care about the deer population and how it affects migration and all these things. So they really are on the side. And honestly, your dad going and like hunting an elk is so much better in like so many different ways, trickle down economics type way of like, that is so much better than going through a drive-thru and getting a cheeseburger. So I have a lot of like actually like respect and empathy for hunters. I know hunters who are like, yeah, I only eat the meat that I hunt. And listen, if everybody did that, we would have a much, much better system.
True. Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. From Wyoming, I feel like when people are like, well, if you're going to go like, if you're going to eat meat, you better go kill it yourself. I'm like, well, my dad did that.
Right.
But when you hear that like prompt or question doesn't really mean the same thing.
Yeah.
Because not many people do.
Yeah, that's cool. And I mean, you know, I'm not somebody who like, oh, I couldn't do it because I fished and, you know, I have uncles that hunt. So, you know, I'm well aware of the process of it. And, you know, in the same, I still wouldn't want to. This is still a deer that, has children and like has, wants and survival instincts and, needs. I mean, we could even argue how much of actual consciousness they have and decision making, but it is in terms of like what is like an atrocity on our society. It is it's factory farming. It's not hunting.
That's like the biggest issue. Yeah,
correct. It's
100%,
capitalism.
I
and
agree.
we have to raise, 1 billion cattle and kill them as quickly as possible. That's the main issue.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I had a few other questions on our list. Do you want to keep talking about this or pivot to them?
Your choice.
Okay. Let's pivot a little, and I'm glad Lacey's here for this. So when I was on Reddit and I was looking at like classic advice questions, a lot of them were like introverts who are looking to date, but they don't really know how. And I thought of you because you're very extroverted.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, I wonder what Austin would think about this if someone came to him and was like, I don't even know like where to start. What are your thoughts?
So I would say that, first of all, language and communication is an art. So even if you are a little bit more extroverted, I mean, my problem is that like I will just A, not stop talking, or B, start talking into a completely different subject. So I have to work on that as well. But if you're an introvert and like, I'm sorry, what was the question? And if they want to start dating,
they like, yeah, because this is a big issue. I don't think you're quite tapped into like the dating.
I'm not tapped into the dating. I will say this. Am I talking for more males or females or both?
Men. Yeah.
Okay, so men specifically. Okay, so I'd love your opinion on this as well.
Okay.
It seems to me, and I don't want to put any gender roles out there, but if I think it tends to be that women prefer to be talked to by the man first. They would like to be the one that is approached. They don't want to do the approaching.
Okay.
So if you're a man and you're an introvert, and that's tough to do. So I would say just start throwing yourself immediately into uncomfortable social situations.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is if you're at Starbucks, compliment the person working there on her pin and just try to start a conversation with that. Okay. And just start working on it. And, if you said something embarrassing, who cares? Right away, just like feel that, move on. And, throw yourself into another conversation with a neighbor or somebody you work with and just try to get used to having conversations. And for that person that you're interested in approaching, honestly, just do it. Just throw yourself out there. The one thing that this is what worked for me. If you saw my wife, you would see she's way hotter than me.
Lacey is stunning.
Yeah, she's super hot. But I just immediately, we became very close. We were first like friends right away, and I think that's super important because I think especially now the area we live in is like very frat boy ASU, and the gym we go to is just so frat boy ASU. And it is just so like, these guys just don't know how to have a like civilized, deep conversation. And I would say just get used to having that, like start learning, how to state your opinions properly and how to listen properly, because I think that will go much, much further with the person that you're trying to start dating. Yeah. But I also, even when we were becoming friends, I did tell Lacey right away. I was like, just so you know, like I do like you. Like it's not going to change. Like, I want to be friends, but like I made it very clear from the jump, like, just so you know, like, I know you like me as a friend, but like I like you.
Which, as an extrovert, like that's why I have a trouble with this question, because I'm like, that's exactly what I would do. Right. Which is like putting myself in the like shoes of an introvert. I'm like, I have no idea what you would do. Yeah. Because why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah, and I think, like I said, it's just like anything. You have to work on your skills, and anybody can learn how to converse properly. And honestly, I would say introverts have. If you can learn how to have a great conversation, for my problem is I think with talking. So like, even as I'm speaking, it's just like, my brain's working. Introverts tend to have their ideas first kind of come inside and then they express it.
That's so true.
So you really have an advantage and lean into that, you don't have to fill every space with, a word. Yeah. And just, work on it. Try to have as many conversations as possible and just get good at it. And, you will. It's just like anything. It's just like working out. You just have to throw yourself in there.
No, that's great advice. I think the only thing, because like I struggle to put myself in the shoes of introverts. The only thing I was thinking of with this question was like find an extroverted woman. Because she's probably going to do a lot of the work.
Do you think that's important? Because that's something that I've thought about. Do you think it's important that if you're an extrovert, you should find an introvert and vice versa?
I think there's a very yin yang thing with relationships that
Yeah.
I do like. And I think a lot of the relationships that I kind of like, I think are very healthy and I want to model in my life. There is a yin yang thing, but I don't think it's
Right.
necessarily a given.
I mean, I don't know a lot of relationships where it's like both extroverts. There's a couple for sure, or both introverts.
Yeah.
Both introverts could work a little bit more because it's just like you both stay inside. That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
But it tends to be that one person's talking and one person's listening. in
Yeah,
the
no, I
relationship.
agree.
So,
I agree.
yeah, that's super interesting. Do you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm so extroverted.
Oh, okay.
Which, by the way,
Interesting.
for people listening at work, which is a lot of my demographic, I don't think they would know that because I shut up at work.
You're such a calm, and this is a compliment, like a stoic person, and I could see people coming across as an introvert, but I think that's super interesting that like you.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I like resonate so much with what you said about like, oh, when I'm talking, like I don't even know what I'm saying.
Right.
Because when I process, like it's so out loud that
You're just on the ride. You're along for the ride.
like I'm finding out what I'm saying as you guys are.
I'm just as stunned by what I'm saying as you
I say
are.
that so many times where I'm like, we both just figured that out.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true.
But like living with the girls, I've dated an introvert and like I live with 2 introverts. Like it is good for me because in the way like I learned the other aspect where I'm like, they don't say anything until they know.
Yeah, and I mean that's just a beautiful skill because like I think probably most of my problems are by things that I have said and just been like, why did I say that? So it's something I'm learning and just to shut up.
There's so many times where I'll say something and then like a minute later I'm like, I don't even think that. I don't even believe that. I just was saying it.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, it's cool because podcasting does kind of teach you this because your words, like, they're actually recorded. Like, you actually can go back and see what you said. So it does make you a little bit more mindful of what you're saying and make sure that what you're saying is the truth.
Yeah.
And I think that's I think that's what I respect about introverts. As long as you're speaking actual truth, I think as long as you're always speaking truth, anything you say is valid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where it's like introverts can be like, oh, like, what do I think about this? And me, I'm like, as I'm talking, I'm trying to figure out what I think about it.
Yeah. No, but literally. I'm glad you said that because I've actually been saying that for a minute.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice to introverted men. So perfect. Okay, I have 2 questions. Oh, actually, no, let me ask this. Are you still good to keep going?
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. So is Lacey an introvert or extrovert?
Lacey is definitely an introvert.
Okay.
I would say, though, that Lacey is somebody, we both are extremely, like, busy people, like just constantly wanting to do stuff. So in that way, she could seem maybe a little very social.
You are social. You always plan things, which is why I was wondering. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we both are that way. We both are like, hey, what are we like? Let's do something. So in that way, she is, and that's why she's just such a great partner too, because it's like we can do things, and if we have like dinner parties, like she's cooking and I'm entertaining. I'm the jester, so it works.
Yeah.
So far.
That makes the next question make more sense because I was wondering like how do you balance differing like hobbies and interests within your marriage? Because I do think from like just the like outside perspective that I have, you guys do have very differing hobbies and interests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think it's something we are like actively actually currently working on, which is leaning into the things that we share. I'm definitely a major nerd, obviously. I mean, I have a video game podcast. So, but Lacey is surprisingly nerdy. Like she is still she's very into Lord of the Rings. Like we are very into that. We go to a lot of movies together, watching shows together. And I know these are like, small things, but I do think when you're married, even just like you both working all day, you just want to come home and like watch a show and watching a show together. You'd be surprised how much it brings you together. Because I would find ourselves like watching an episode of something and it's like the next day, it's like we're talking about, it's like, oh, like what did you think of this? Mm-hmm. And it creates conversation, it creates connections. So it's been kind of those ways, it's kind of happened naturally, but at the same time, because we are both very independent, we've had to work on it a little bit more and find things, that we're excited to do together.
Yeah, yeah. I also like though that you guys are like okay with having different hobbies because Lacey, it doesn't bother you that you're you're not on his podcast, right? Like that's like a good current example where Lacey's like, that's your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've always had like your own thing. You've always had a band ever since I met you.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
She said he's always had a band ever since she met him.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to always like do something, like have a hobby. You know, I just like to stay busy, but we still find time, you know, for each other. We still, and I think that's, you know, it's important too. I mean, if you are somebody like us, where I think it's very important for us to feel that sense of independence and feel like we're our own person. And I think we've always allowed each other to have that, even as we are married. And so a lot of that has been, you know, we do have, you know, hobbies, and we still do different things. And for us, honestly, we try to do more like, okay, we actually do need to be like, do more things, just us. And so it's important at the same time, but also don't feel like, hey, you can still have your hobbies. You can still, you know, man or woman, you can still, you know, be independent and do the things you love and have a successful, healthy relationship.
Yeah. When you guys were dating, were there any clues that was going to be the reality? Because I know when some people are dating, that's a big thing that I look for, where I'm like, is this a relationship where I can do my own thing? Because that is important to me.
I knew and I've always been attracted to like pretty independent women too. So I knew kind of right away, like, oh yeah, you know, this girl like really has her crap together and like knows what she thinks and knows what she wants. And so I never consciously thought like, oh, I'll be able to, you know, do a podcast or have a band. I think I just kind of knew that, you know, she respected my wants and dreams, and I respected hers.
Yeah, perfect. Let's manifest that for me. Yeah.
My wife's shaking my head like, wow, that was just a total lie.
Do you think anything different, Lacey?
Of what?
When you were dating Austin, were there any moments where you were like, oh, I think we are both independent to make this work? Or like, do I see a future where we both have differing interests in which we can, like, it builds a happy marriage, but we cohabitate in that way?
I don't even know if I've really thought about it that deeply at the time.
Yeah.
I think I was like impressed with all the things that you like to do. And I think back then, at least, like I probably joined you with those things more, like going to concerts and stuff. And then as you get married, or as time goes on in your marriage, you kind of value your own time or your own interests again a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was a time, many years, where you said you don't have any hobbies. Like you would tell me that. And I think I've worked on that over the years too. And maybe that's what's helped.
Of like making your own hobbies?
Yeah.
Or realizing he does have them?
I don't know. Like maybe there was a point in our marriage where I'm like, oh, you have a lot of hobbies. You're doing a lot of stuff. And maybe that's when I started realizing, oh, I should probably have some as well, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe that's, what led us to be a little more independent. It's not a bad thing though. I never thought your hobbies were like a bad thing.
Yeah.
So,
which is good. There's so many
Keeps you
couples,
busy.
I'm sure you guys know because you have even more married friends than I, where it's like, well, if we don't do this together, then it must be a slight on that person.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that was never going to be in the cards for me, just because like I am independent and she's also independent, but even like I also just like don't even think to tell people things of like, oh yeah, I'm doing this, which is also a problem. That's my fault. So yeah, but I mean, I don't know what it is. I mean, I was always like, my dad is very much this way. He's like always has like a hobby or doing something. So I just was like, yeah, like after work, like I want to be doing something, like working on something, I guess. So, but Lacey's been like super, super supportive always, and very nice about it.
There's 2 questions on my list I haven't asked yet. One is about like a simple habit that's changed your life, and the other one is on like thoughts on early 20s versus later or 30s. How old are you?
So I'm 28.
Okay. How old are you, Lacey? Same age. Okay. Because I was like, I don't think you guys have hit 30 yet, but I think you're close.
I'm 23 days older than her.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I know. I'm much more mature.
Which one do you want to answer first?
Okay, so the simple habit. So I think this is something I'd mentioned when we were first talking about doing the podcast. Just my newest sort of like obsession has been meditation and just like mindfulness training. And I would say of any like trick or habit or anything I've applied in my life, I think it's been the most important thing.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, everything we do requires some sort of attention. And if you can learn to point your attention at specific especially for me who has ADHD and like can get bored and sidetrack so quickly, it's just been so helpful to learn how to focus your attention. And really, I mean, that's like the very like shallow things that meditation can do. But I mean, you want to talk about improving your like neurology, like your actual brain can, start to grow, and helping your blood pressure go down, and breath work. I mean, there's just so many benefits. But the idea that, like, let's take something like an emotion. Like if you're in a really stressful situation, you actually have the power to be like, oh, I'm stressed. What are its implications? Oh, my heart is beating a little bit. My palms are a little sweaty. I feel moisture, coming from my hair. You can pinpoint these implications, and you can burn up in them. You can be like, I'm just going to feel it completely, and then you can move on. Or you can recognize that and be like, oh, I don't need to be feeling this way at all. These are things. What's causing this? And if you can separate from the emotion, that is like a superpower. Because I think so many of us, we just get so caught up in our emotions. It's like when we get angry or sad, it's just we're completely lost in that emotion.
I definitely do.
And the idea that you can separate from that and you can just recognize it like, oh, I'm feeling this way. I mean, it's something that I think actually should be taught in kindergarten, preschool, is like, having kids sit and just work on the breath and notice thoughts come up. And when they're upset or frustrated, it's like, what does that feel like? Like, tell me why do you think you're frustrated?
Yeah.
And something I was never taught in school ever, and I wish I was, and it's been probably the most life-changing thing I've ever discovered.
Is just like the concept of sitting with your emotions and figuring out what they are.
I would say like meditation practice specifically is sitting, doing, and there's some great apps out there. I mean, there's there's Headspace, there's the Waking Up app. The Waking Up app is the one I specifically like, and it's made by, and he's kind of a controversial figure, but Sam Harris, he's a neuroscientist, and it is absolutely like not religious at all. He's on purpose not made it religious. It's purely from a scientifical, or that's not a word, a scientific, scientifical, what's the word I'm thinking of? Let's just say a scientific perspective of like breath work, and he studies the brain and what it can do. And so it's been awesome. And I've gotten Lacey on it, and she really enjoys it. So if you can find 10 minutes to do some app and have breath work, I mean, that will just start your day in the best way possible.
Yeah. Because I've never downloaded those apps, do they talk you through it?
Yeah, so I think both will talk you through it, and they'll be like, let's focus on your breath, or start to include sounds. What does the feeling of sitting look like? And it will kind of guide you through exactly what to do, what to focus on, and you'll immediately see how impossible it is to sit and to just focus on the breath.
Yeah.
I mean, when is the last time you have sat and just read a book for 1 hour straight without getting up or looking at Instagram or, being distracted? I mean,
a long time.
Our generation, it's impossible to do. So you'll very quickly be like, oh, this is a skill I need to learn, is to just be present, just to literally be present in the moment. Because actually the future and the past are both complete illusions. I mean, tonight on our way home, like me and Lacey could literally die in a car wreck on the way home. And I'm going to be stressed about, oh, I got to pay this bill tomorrow, or, oh, shoot, I got to meet this client or do this job, or, oh, I need to do the law. It's like our mind is just this constant, incessant, blabbing thing that just doesn't stop talking. And meditation can teach you to just shut that up.
Did you ever go to therapy? Because that sounds like very therapy adjacent.
Yeah, so it's definitely therapy. I have gone to therapy for a couple of years now. and definitely is. I mean, I think that's one of the things they teach you is like, hey, you're not your emotions.
Yeah.
And so kind of that training along with actual like meditation work helps you to work through feelings or PTSD or traumatic events or whatever. So, but yes, I mean, therapy has also been, and I think everybody should go to therapy. I mean, it's
I
been
do
life
too.
changing.
That's been controversial in some spaces where I say that and they're like, that's crazy. And I'm like, well, actually, even if it's literally just 1 or 2 sessions, I feel like everyone can benefit from at least having someone challenge them.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think it's crazy when people are like, I'll never go to therapy. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just things there are like and there are bad therapists out there for sure. You know,
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you vibe with a person, and I have a great therapist. But there are things that, you know, these people are educated, you know, they understand how the mind and trauma works, or even if you don't have trauma and you're just, you know, you're curious how to deal with uncomfortable emotions. I mean, therapy can be life changing. So I don't think I've met anybody who's actually done therapy and been like, oh yeah, that was a terrible
waste
idea.
of time. Yeah.
You know, there are bad therapists for sure who, you know, they're people just like us. So, and you're dealing with such raw topics. So you want to make sure you have the right one, but everybody can benefit from it. And I think definitely our generation is much more open to it. And I think past generations have not been. And I think there's a reason why, you know, we are overall like a little more moral people.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Not like beating our wives after dinner and things like that, you know?
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you said that about therapy because I'm thinking about that. Let's wrap up the podcast with the question about 20s versus 30s because you're almost there. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think 20s are a really weird time, and I'm going to steal some ideas here, but I heard from, I can't remember her name. She's like some TikTok thing. She said that like 20s are kind of you learn that life is like a single player game. Like it's a solo experience. And your 20s are kind of realizing that because it's like younger years in high school, you're told what to do, you're in classrooms, you know, everything is like scheduled. And then the 20s, it's like, oh, like I have to decide what I got to, you know, make my own doctor's appointments. I got to make my laundry. I got to drive myself to work. Yeah. And even if I
have to decide to wake up and go to work even.
Exactly. Yeah. And even if you're in a relationship, you do realize like, oh, I'm just, this is really, I'm playing my own game here.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of growing pains with that. I mean, I've definitely experienced it. 20s is kind of an interesting decade of like figuring things out. I do think the frontal lobe forming in 27 cannot be underestimated. I think it's for me, I kind of felt like, oh, wow, like I have this sense of identity. And so, you know, I think that's the biggest difference I've noticed personally. Yeah. Have you felt the same way?
Yeah, because I'm almost 27. Yeah, I agree. When were you talking earlier about your beliefs change? Was it with straight edge where when you were 16 to like 20?
It was like 26, 27, something around there.
Yeah. I resonated with that a little bit because I was like, I do feel like there were shifts in my perspective and my thinking around 25, 26, soon to be 27, where I'm like, I never would have thought about that earlier, but I'm glad that I did.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's too, like, it's okay in your 20s, especially to like just try things, you know, and make mistakes, you know, just say yes to things. Yeah. And I mean, even in your 30s, do that. I mean, I don't think you can ever not do that. But in your 20s, it's just kind of like, for me, you know, and people might look and it's like, oh, you changed. It's like, no, I just want to, you know, wear different personalities and kind of figure out what fits.
Or like, I've thought more about what I want.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So I am starting to feel like kind of like, oh, this is what I, you know, think and want, but you know, I'm still figuring it out. Same. So, but yeah, 20s is like it's an interesting period because you're really just thrown into adulthood with no training.
Yes. No, you're not.
And I think that's one of the things late 20, I've started to realize this is like, because I think we view our parents as like, oh, they know everything, you know, and like, I got to listen to them. And as I'm getting older, it's like, oh, there's never like a switch. It's like, oh, I'm an adult now and I know things. It's like, we're all just like still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Or I noticed too, like the past few years where I'm like, no, I love my parents so much. I respect them in so many ways. I don't feel the same way.
Yes.
Or it's like, we grew up with this mentality and it's like, I actually I feel differently.
Yeah, and I think that's really hard for parents too, because especially when like you've literally come from them,
Yes,
and they're
yeah.
like actually a part of you, and for them to be like, "Hey, I have a different opinion
Yeah.
than you," it's kind of it's harrowing.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially if it's a big topic, and I mean, I've had big disagreements with my parents and family members, and it can be tough, but I think it's very important to explore your own individuality and authenticity and
Yeah.
just define yourself.
Yeah. I was also thinking kind of the opposite too, where sometimes when you're in your 20s, you like have this big rebellious attitude. Not that everyone does, but where it's like, because I feel differently, like I have to tell you.
Right.
And I think as I got into like 25, 26, I was like, no, I feel differently. I don't have to tell you.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel the need to like justify everything that I do to someone who I know feels differently. I'm just going to do it.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I definitely think I've definitely succumbed to that. It's just like I got to tell everybody kind of what I think.
You guys have to know that I think differently.
Exactly. Yeah, it is an interesting balance for sure. I think especially late 20s, you just start being more comfortable. And honestly, like I think in the early 20s, you got kind of these rosy-eyed, like I'm going to take on the world. And I think late 30s, I mean late 20s for me, it's just like I'm more just like leave me alone. I want peace kind of thing. Like I just literally want peace. So, yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Do you kind of feel now that you're almost 27, do you feel yourself like getting into a new phase?
I don't know. I feel like through my entire life, I've always had ups and downs, and I think that might continue. But I think that my level periods are just more level.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what anybody wants.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a hard balance, though. I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out, honestly.
Okay. Glad to hear, though, because there's this other thing. I was talking to someone else who was married and bought a house. One of my other friends, this was like last week, and she was like, I'm about to turn 25. And I forgot I was like older than her. So I'm like, I'm about to turn 27.
Wow.
And I'm like, well, there is this feeling where it's like, I'm not even an adult yet because I haven't hit these milestones. But I don't think that's actually true.
No, that's not true. I mean, that's for the birds. It's like whatever you're doing, as long as you're doing it truthfully, like, I think I've seen that more. It's like, oh, I'm not. I think especially too late 20s, I could see people being like, oh man, I gotta get married. I gotta have a house. Like I gotta I gotta set up a 401k. And, I think, of course, if you want those things, that is important. But also, like, we're living in a time where, like, you can be living in Airbnbs and working remotely your whole life.
True,
I mean, that is an actual possibility.
Yeah.
There's people that buy a van and they gut it and they live at the beach and they, work at Starbucks while they're living at the beach. So nowadays, I mean, the possibilities of lifestyles are endless, and you don't have to try to get the American dream, like,
Agreed.
home with the white picket fence. Like, do what you want.
Yeah. Yeah. There is like, in a way, it's like capitalism has made us so much less. We have less options, but in other ways, it's like we have so many more.
Yeah.
When it comes to remote work or the way that we see our home or something like that.
Yeah. And I think the internet, AI, I think we're getting into a time period where it's just like there's really so many options for jobs and making money. So, but I mean, there are countless examples of people who, I mean, the one off the top of my head is like Steve Carell was in like in his 40s when he got The Office, and that was like his final big break, and he was an actor for years. So, this idea is like, oh, you got to have it figured out by a certain age. That's just, that's a concept. It's not true.
That was great advice, by the way. I know you were like, I'm going to speak for all men. I'm like worried. I think you gave great advice.
Good. I hope so.
I like all your perspective. Yeah.
Okay. Appreciate it. Well, yeah.
And Lacey's when you hopped in.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Like I said, I mean, it's so cool that you do this. And I hope we're getting less. I think like, especially our age is like so scared of like the cringe culture and like being cringy and embarrassing. And it's like, we got to get away from that and just like, I want people to just make art, like just start making things. And if it sucks, it sucks. Who cares? Just like do something. And I really appreciate you and like your sister who literally wrote like 3 books.
Taylor did write 3 books.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, you guys are super inspiring. So thank you for having me on, and thank you for doing your thing.
Yeah, I'm excited you came. Anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I mean, just if you like video games,
Yeah, tell them where you're at.
You know, I just didn't annoy you like crazy. Would you kindly WYK_POD everywhere? We got some episodes up now, and yeah. Otherwise, I mean, keep listening to Little Miss Podcast.
Thank you. Also, if you're here just for Austin, please like my podcast on Spotify.
Stay on and keep
For
listening.
some reason, I'm at 3.9 stars, so I don't know which one of my ops is out there.
Wait.
I don't know which one of my ops brought me like past 4, but please, if you're just here for Austin, hit the 5 stars.
So somebody just hated for no reason?
That's the vibe. I
That's
think I have like
crazy.
40 reviews and I'm at 3.9 stars. So
If you actually rate a podcast under 5 stars, you're like the Karen of like Yelp, like just giving a 1-star like restaurant. Like you are that. You're our generation's that.
yeah,
So
I personally like offended you in some way. So.
that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
You should have. We should find that person and get them on the podcast.
I wish Spotify would give me ads, but they don't.
Yeah. Me too.
I looked.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway, okay. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I think
Yeah,
that's
appreciate it.
Okay.
Cool.
Bye.